amnesia. Who was here yesterday? Remind us all of what we talked about yesterday. Remind us what we talked about yesterday. Gosh, you guys, seriously, I don't know where my mind is. Anyway, today we are talking about 3 things that we're not doing enough of in marriage, in our relationships, on a consistent basis. And if you follow regularly, you know that the roommates, there we go, decadent noob, you get an A. You were paying attention. You get an A plus. Vicky, you get an A plus. Go to the head of the class. All right, so we talked about yesterday, we talked about roommates, the roommate syndrome, and falling into the trap of just the in and out, checking in, checking out, scheduling time with your spouse, scheduling time for this, scheduling time for that, but not really scheduling time to be with them, to be, present with them and do things with them and share in their interests. So we talked about that yesterday. Today, again, we're focusing on 3 things that we can be and should be doing more of in our marriages. Let's just jump in. There are 3 things that I feel are very, very important that we make sure that we're doing on a consistent basis. For those of you who follow me regularly, who listen in and chime in on these marriage conversations regularly, there's 3 things that I hit on pretty consistently. Those are communication, prayer, and consistency, right? So I'm a very firm believer that you need to have those very 3 things to make sure that you are, in all aspects of your marriage, to make sure that you are on the right track in strengthening your marriage. You need to be consistent. You need to be, you guys, consistent. You need to have communication, and you need to have prayer. You guys, pray for me. So today, let's start with the first thing. The first thing, it's really important that we do and that we continue to keep up with is showing compassion for our mate. I think a lot of times we are very quick to assume the worst. So or take personal offense to things. For instance, if I ask my husband to grab me whatever from the car, and he's like, really? Right now? Immediately I'll be like, yeah, I asked you, can't you just go to the car and get me the charger that I left? You know what I mean? And I'll take offense. I'll be like, gosh, why doesn't he want to get up and do one simple thing for me? Why won't he just get up and do all the things that I do for him? We immediately take offense to it, personal offense to it. And I think we forget to put ourselves in our spouse's shoes. So going back to the example, I asked my husband to go to the car and get me my charger. He just came home from work. Unbeknownst to me at work, he, was belittled by a coworker or manager. He, didn't get a chance to eat his lunch. He got a report back that he isn't meeting the levels that he's supposed to meet, isn't hitting the numbers that he needs to meet. So he's now come home with all of this on his head. He's probably got bills that he's thinking about we need to pay, and I'm sitting here talking about go get a charger from the car when all he wants to do is just sit down and take a breath. He just wants to sit down and relax. He wants to sit down, come home, and just kick his feet up, for a second. And I'm telling him, go get chop, go get my charger. Not thinking about his day, not thinking about the fact that he's got pressure, and as a man, as just, men in general, ego doesn't always allow them to communicate those feelings of, being belittled at work or being told they did something wrong at work. And, as a husband, you probably don't want to come home and be like, yeah, wife, it was a rough day. My boss made me feel bad, made me feel sad. I mean, what man's going to come home and say that to his wife? It doesn't happen often. So while we're in our own heads about go get me this, go do that, we need to remember that our husband had a full day too, that our spouse had a full day too. They interacted with people. Not all interactions were pleasant. They've got stuff that they're thinking about too, stuff that's on their mind too. So we need to be mindful and make sure that we are showing compassion. It's not about us all the time. We can't always, make everything about us. Just because he's, tired, just because he doesn't feel like hopping up at the second that you ask him doesn't mean he loves you any less. It doesn't mean that he cares about you any less or any of those things. He's tired. Just like we're tired at points of the day, that, the same is true for him. So we need to show compassion and not always take offense immediately and want to have an attitude immediately when he doesn't want to do something at the drop of a dime. And if you think about it, a lot of times, like, for example, when you go through the drive-through at like a McDonald's or whatever, and we've all experienced this before, you encounter a rude server or a rude, window person, whatever they're called, a rude employee. You don't immediately take offense to it, do you? I think 99% of us probably say, gosh, that person had a bad day, or gosh, what's wrong with that person, or gosh, the person before us must have really, ticked her off. I learned the hard way. I would be like, dang, what did I do or say? Yeah, I think we do. A lot of times we take things personally when we don't need to. And when we tend to take things personally, that feeling of, of sadness, we'll just call it sadness, that feeling resides. It doesn't just come and go. It stays in our hearts. It digs a little space and it stays there. And the more that we do that, the more that we take on these assumptions of personal attack from our spouse, when they're really not personal attacks, the more that we build on that little nugget of, sadness, and it builds and it builds and it builds over time. So we just want to make sure that we are not always taking things personally, that we're not always thinking immediately something is they have an issue with us when it comes to our spouses. A lot of times they just want to sit down. They just want to relax. It's nothing to do with us. They just want to chill for a second, Yes, it manifests, but thank goodness I don't hold grudges. And that's another really important thing too. You cannot hold grudges in marriage. You can't. You just can't. And for those of us who have, or those of us who do, we know how it affects our marriage. And in everything that we do, there's a sense of bitterness. There's a sense of sarcasm. There's a sense of, unwillingness to go the extra mile. So yeah, that's a good point. Grudges are not our friends in marriage. But back to the example, when you go through a drive-through, and you have a negative experience with the teller, or whatever the guys are called, you don't immediately take offense. You don't immediately say, oh my gosh, I feel so personally, attacked. A lot of times you'll say, gosh, that person must have had a pretty rough day, or they must not like working there. Or I think a lot of us say, if you don't want to work there, you shouldn't be working here. Nobody's making you work here. I mean, we don't say that to them, but that's the thought that goes through our head, right? So just like we don't take those situations personally, we shouldn't take every situation in our marriage personally, every response from our husband personally. They don't mean to make us feel bad. I truly believe our husbands don't mean to make us feel like, we don't matter. Sometimes the response may make us think that way, may make us think that that's how they feel, that we don't matter. But 99% of the time, we are making an assumption that's not true based on, his response, which he's tired. He's, got a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, whatever. So put yourself in your husband's shoe, in your spouse's shoes. Show compassion, on a daily basis, on a consistent basis, as I like to say. The other thing is showing kindness. And I've given this example before that, in work, at the grocery store, at the gas station, at the nail place, it's so easy for us to show kindness. It's so easy for us to just be, this wonderful, great, beautiful person, to complete strangers, essentially. We're the nicest people in the world. We're the kindest people you'll ever want to meet. Our representative is like just gleaming and beautiful and kind and a dozen roses, But when we come home, we are not that. We are not kind to our spouses. It's like we feel like marriage is a pass. Marriage is our pass to come home and just be the ugly person, the mean person that we want to be sometimes, And so we forget to show our husbands, the person that puts up with us, the person that puts up with our attitudes, with our morning breath, with our, our nasty habits. We forget to show those people who love us, who married us, that we forget to show them kindness. We're not intentional about our daily acts of kindness. But like I said, when you go to work, you're just the nicest person on earth. I don't know if any of you have experienced it, but I know when I was younger, my mom would take us to different work things, right? She'd always introduce us to all of her coworkers. And, at home, she was pretty strict, she was like, you do this and do your chores, blah, blah, blah. So we knew her to be strict. At work, it's like, oh, your mom is so sweet. Your mom is so kind. We love your mom, and it's like, who? Because the person that we knew, of course we loved her. Of course, every day wasn't just her being mean and strict and all that as we felt when we were kids. But, we knew somebody that was a little bit different than who showed up at work. You know what I mean? And the same is true for us. I bet that a lot of you that are with us today are the same way. You come home and you don't want to put on, because at work and outside the four walls of your home, you have to put on a lot. We have to put on. It's just kind of how life is. And I'm not saying that we're all fake, but I'm saying that we put our best foot forward when we're outside of the four walls of our home. Whether it's at church on Sunday with our nice long dresses and our Bibles tucked under our arms, or if it's at work, we sit in our desk and we, do our work and we say hi and we ask if anybody needs any extra help, with anything. In a grocery store, we let people get in front of us because they only have one item. We're just so nice and kind everywhere else. But when it comes to home, we're not always that nice, kind person that we should be, that we ought to be. So we have to remember that kindness counts. Kindness is important at home, especially with your husband, especially with your wife. Again, this is the person that told the world that they want to spend the rest of their life with you. Do you want to spend the rest of your life with someone that's mean? With somebody that doesn't show you kindness? With someone that doesn't want to get you a bottle of water from the refrigerator? No, you want somebody that's going to be kind to you. Everybody wants somebody that's going to be kind to them. So we have to remember that we have to show kindness. We have to be that best person, not only outside of the four walls of our home, but at home. And especially if you are, if you're married to someone who's not a believer, it's even more so important that we are, examples of Christ, and that we are examples of what it is to be a follower of Jesus. If we're coming home with a big attitude, we talking about, I'm not cooking, talking about, just being mean. How is that going to draw somebody to Christ? How is that going to, show anybody that you are any kind of a Christian, right? If anything, that's going to push people away. That's going to push someone away. So we want to make sure that we are always demonstrating kindness. And it's hard, you guys. It's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's something that you have to be intentional about, just as it is with showing compassion. We have to be intentional about how we show compassion and intentional about showing kindness. So make sure that we are, like I said, deliberate with the things that we're doing. If there are things that your husband likes, that that he likes, that you used to do, continue to do them. Do them again. Let him know that what you're doing are attempts to show him kindness, attempts to show him love. And I bet you don't even have to tell him that you're trying to be kind. So don't, how can you say you love God and love your spouse and love your spouse. How can you say you love God and love your spouse the